fuck was that?
In the last few videos of the 8.6, I've been going on and on about how I'm probably going to get a first start the video, but no promises, and then never actually getting it done. Well, this time I can actually promise you that by the end of this video, we will get a first start out of this car. But first, there's a lot of little things we need to check off in order to get that first start, so let's head over to the whiteboard and see what we need to do. In an attempt to better organize everything, I've written down everything that needs to be done in order to get this car to its first start. We got some easy things here like engine oil and trans fluid and coolant. The trigger wheel is a little bit more complicated. I don't entirely know what I'm doing there, but more on that in a bit. Then we move on to these three, and this is perhaps where the biggest problem is overall. You see, in a perfect world, all three of these would be controlled by the ECU, but I made a big oversight, so let's go in the car and talk about what that oversight is. Alright, I did a terrible job explaining this before, so I'm just going to rehash it here. My big problem is that I have three outputs that need to be controlled by the ECU, but I only have one auxiliary output left to spare. This is because I bought the cheapest ECU possible that had the least possible outputs, thinking I wouldn't need more for a 4-cylinder engine. And while for the most part that was true, I definitely did not know what I was getting into when I first ordered that ECU, and I didn't know how many auxiliary outputs I was going to need. Now, luckily this wasn't too hard to solve in my case, but there were a few hurdles I needed to get over. I started off with what I thought would be one of the easier items, which is the tachometer. This is the one that I decided to dedicate my one remaining port on the ECU to so that I could control it for the ECU. This made it a lot easier to test the PWM control and see if I had everything hooked up correctly. Here's a little circuit diagram so you know what I'm actually doing, but I needed to get a coil to boost the signal for the tachometer. Otherwise, the 12-volt signal the ECU was outputting wouldn't be strong enough for the tachometer to pick up on it. I used the old coil out of a relay since relays already have a coil in them, but I had to remove the little armature because it will interfere with the signal. So I spent some time breaking apart this relay so that I could take out everything but the coil and then put it all back together. Let's go for some easy items while we're here. So I've got my mechanical fan in here and I'm using the blacktop pump. What I found out is that you are not supposed to use this pump with a mechanical clutch fan. Someone in the comments pointed out that this is how you break these pumps. I had heard something about this, but I wasn't sure of the exact combination that caused it. Now I know. And thank you very much to the man in the comments who pointed this out to me, because otherwise I would have ended up with a broken water pump and I would have been very upset. And there we go. We are replacing this with something and I'll show you that tomorrow. And it's another item we can mark off right here. Oh shit. Now let's move on to the fuel pump. At this point, I decided to move on to my fuel pump, but I spent way too long explaining this, so let me go over what happened. First of all, I made another video about this, so if you want to know the full story, you can go check out that video. I know most of you didn't watch it because it only got like 50 views. Now, ideally, the fuel pump would be controlled by the ECU, but since I didn't have that option anymore, I decided that I would control it via the tachometer. In other words, I need a way to power the fuel pump relay while the car is on specifically, but not while the engine isn't running. So I can't just use ignition switch power to control this. I was trying to find a way that I could use the signal from my tachometer as an indication that the engine is running. In other words, if there is a signal from the tachometer, then therefore the engine should be running, and that will be the condition for which I power the fuel pump. Additionally, I need the fuel pump to prime for around 2 to 3 seconds when I first turn the key. I spent a while trying to make this work with analog components, but I kept coming up with no dice. But then I realized there was another solution to this. You see, I needed a small controller that was capable of logic with a certain input signal and would output a signal accordingly. We have a word for that in engineering, and it's called an Arduino. Arduino? Maybe I'm saying that wrong. Anyways, I started out with this Arduino Nano at first, and this ended up being a whole day project because I had to relearn Arduino because I haven't really messed with any of this stuff since college. And I mean early college, not like recent college. It took a bit of trial and error, but once I got myself refamiliarized with coding, I was able to get almost everything working on that Arduino Nano except for one key issue. You see, I'm trying to output a 12-volt signal to my fuel pump relay to tell it when to turn on. Well, the problem with that is that all these little Arduino boards are outputting a digital signal in 5 volt. And almost everything in a car, including that relay, are running on 12 volts. So this voltage is not enough to actually drive the coil in the fuel pump relay to control it. So I was able to overnight an Arduino Uno with a Relay 4 shield. More on that in that other video, but long story short, this enabled me to have 12 volt circuit control with a 5 volt microcontroller. Combined, this whole side project took 2 or 3 days, but it forced me to relearn Arduino, which is pretty good, and it also got me more interested in coding for projects like this in the future. Again, the whole problem here is that I don't have enough auxiliary outputs on my ECU, but I realized that there's ways that I can expand that using the CAN bus. There are CAN IO expanders. There's one from Haltech, there's one from ECU Master, but they're all kind of expensive. That Haltech one is 500 bucks. So in the future, I might make my own CAN bus powered IO expander, but I would do it with Arduino, so I have something cool to do for myself. Going back to my fuel pump, once I had those new Arduinos with the relay, I was able to get everything working with a little bit of finagling, and I managed to get my fuel pump working as expected. I'll pretty this one up with some better wiring and a housing later, but for now I had everything I needed to get this working. Now, since I spent about 3 days doing just this one item, item, I decided after this that I would move on to some of the easier items to help get things knocked off the list. So this entire time we've been working on just this alone. Well, all these other ones are easy, so we're just going to start knocking them off as quickly as possible so that we actually get some progress done. And next we're going to start with the electric fan wiring so that we can get that out of the way nice and easy. This is my original radiator, and this is a 16-inch ball fan out of my E36. Although it's not really, because this is just a cheap China knockoff that I got for free when I bought the fan shroud. So I've had this just sitting on hand extra in case I ever need it, and today we're going to use it. Now, 16 inches is pretty much way too big for this radiator, and I don't care, I'm doing it anyways. This is not the permanent solution. I'm probably going for Koyorad radiator eventually, and I'll probably buy that Mishimoto fan shroud. But we're focused on just getting this car running and starting for the first time, so for now, this electric fan is better than no fan at all. And in case you forgot, we had to take out our mechanical fan because it doesn't really work with the OEM blacktop water pump. So really, I just needed something to provide some cooling while the engine's running, and this will do just fine. And since we don't have a shroud that'll fit a 16-inch fan on this size radiator, we're just going to be using these typical fan installation kits. It's just some little straps that go through the radiator fins. They'll usually damage your fins. I don't recommend using these normally, and this is just a short-term setup. And with everything all put together, it looks like this. There's a pretty big gap there, and I don't care because this is all temporary. Installing the radiator wasn't too hard, but I did run into a few small issues. For one, my radiator hoses didn't really fit all that well. I had to cut a few of them to length to make sure that they actually worked correctly. Now, I'm using the SQ Engineering cooling kit. Basically, this kit replaces the water block on the back of the head as well as the thermostat housing and makes it generally easier to convert a 20-valve motor into an 8.6. Now, this cooling setup definitely helps, but I'm not exactly sure what radiator hoses were supposed to be used, and I didn't care to ask when I ordered the kit. So I bought some cheap silicone radiator hoses off of Amazon, and they don't really fit all that perfectly, but we're just going to have to go with it for now. This is definitely not the perfect long-term solution because my lower radiator hose is stretched a bit and it's rubbing up against the alternator. Wiring up the relay was pretty easy, but for now I don't really have a good way to control it. I just wired it up with a switch that goes into the cabin, and I don't even have the wires going through the firewall, it literally just went through the window. I'll also have to keep an eye on those coolant temps for now and flick that switch on whenever I see the car starting to get warm. So with that hodgepodge of wiring out of the way, I moved on to some more easy items like filling up the engine oil. Let's talk about oil for a second. I'm going to be using this Driven BR30 5W30 break-in oil. If you haven't been following the series, this is a new 20-valve 4AG blacktop that I just put together. Full rebuild, and it's also got aftermarket pistons and rods. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but from what I researched, the whole point of break-in oil is that this has a lot more zinc in it. That zinc acts as a sacrificial layer, so it kind of helps everything from wearing as quickly, especially for that first time startup. But more importantly, this is low detergent. That means that there isn't a lot of additives in this oil. We want wear protection like zinc, but we don't necessarily want friction modifiers like molybdenum sulfide. We actually want a little bit more friction than usual, especially with the piston rings against the cylinders. That helps the piston rings break in a little bit more quickly. When I poured the oil in, I committed the great sin of not using a funnel, but don't worry, I didn't spill any oil. Although if you were hoping to see me spill a whole bunch of stuff, don't worry, that does come later. While we're here, let's fill up the power steering fluid with some Mercon-free or premium ATF fluid. Pretty generic power steering fluid, so I'm not too worried about this. Alright, that seems all done. After topping off my engine oil and my power steering fluid, I moved on to the transmission. To fill it more easily, I dropped this funnel with a long tube on the end of it from the top of the engine bay so that I can just fill it up from up there. Alright, first of all, let's just see if we can finish emptying out whatever is left in here, which shouldn't be much. Oh, still a lot left in there. That magnetic drain plug is pretty dirty. Holy cow. Guys, a lot of stuff came off with that drain plug. I don't even know if I have the right fluid for this necessarily, but at this point, I think that something that classifies as manual transmission fluid is probably better than nothing. Probably better than what was already in here too. As for the fill plug, it looks like it's a 24 millimeter. Oh man, it's on there tough. Oh shit. Don't strip, please. Please don't strip. What the hell did they do to this? I do have a 6.5/16. Ah, there we go. That could have been bad. So I already put a funnel in from above. Now I'm just going to snake this hose into the transmission, and from there we'll be able to fill it up from up top. If we've already got a drain pan here, we'll just wait until it starts pouring out from here. Oh, I hear it dripping. Yep, okay. We're full. While I was down there, I tried hooking up the reverse switch wiring, but I quickly found out that it didn't necessarily fit anymore. These pins might not be the correct kinds. Not exactly sure what happened to those connectors, but somewhere along the way they got too loose and they no longer hang on correctly. But a little bit of quick research and I found out that these were female butt bullet connectors. So I bought a whole Amazon pack of them and I was able to hook that up just a few days later. So I crimped them onto the end of this wire here. I already tested this size and this is what fits. This is the 14 to 16 AWG size. I'm just gonna test that this fits real quick and then I'm going to heat shrink it all down and we'll be good to go in this. And with that all hooked up, let's see how well this works. Hey, it works. Awesome. I spent a bit of time wiring in a switch for the fan control. I did that because I didn't have a temperature switch and I was just going to do that later, but in the meantime that part came in a little earlier than expected, so now I have it and I'm going to install it. And it's a lot better this way because I didn't really want to drain all the coolant just to install this, but I don't have to because I didn't even fill the coolant yet. I had to cut a few of the radiator hoses again to make this fit, but once I had all that done, it was pretty easy to install, and then I had to do the wiring for it. Luckily, I already had all the relay wiring done. All that was left to do was just run some wires across the top of the engine to that thermal switch as the actual trigger for the relay. But in the meantime, I had ordered some heat shrink as well as a few other little things to make my wiring look a little better, so I took my time trying to make the wiring look a little bit more pretty than all my other previous junk, and when I was done, it looked something like this. I got that all hooked up. I did a pretty nice job, I'd say. It's not perfect, but a bit of heat shrink goes a long ways for setting all this stuff up and making it look pretty. It's certainly a lot better than all this crap. Anyways, let's move on to the crank position sensor. Just so you see it from above first, this is my trigger wheel on the crank. I can adjust it, so I need to get that in place. And then this is the bracket, which this Hall effect sensor here is going to mount to. Now, this is probably too much wire overall, so we're gonna need to cut this because our plug is already right down in here. I mean, I can pull it out of here. It doesn't have to be jammed down in there. But my point is, it's a short run from there right down to there, so I probably don't need this full length. My footage of setting up the trigger wheel wasn't that good because I barely had enough room to get my hands in there as it is, never mind a camera. But all I had to do here was set up the Hall effect sensor so that it was as close as possible to the trigger wheel and also centered on it. Additionally, while I was in here, I set my crank to top dead center and set up my trigger wheel as best as I could. We can dial this in later with a timing light so it doesn't have to be down to the 1 degree. With my trigger wheel all mechanically set up, I moved on to filling up the coolant system, but first I decided to pressure test it to see if there were any leaks. And in my case, it was a good thing I checked because there was a leak. Alright, so there's my Hall effect sensor in place down there. I kind of precariously routed the wires through this whole bracket here, up into here, and then that's where our plug is. As for setting the timing down here on the trigger wheel, well, I kind of just put it at top dead center and then I tried to place the teeth equally in between the Hall effect sensor. Since this is 36 teeth, that means we should see a pulse every 10 degrees offset by 5. Well, first I gotta find out if my cooling system is actually sealed or not. So this pressure tester is very helpful for finding leaks because you'll be able to hear air leaking from somewhere before you fill the coolant system. And I had a leak way down in here where you probably can't even see it. Yeah, it's hard to get a camera in here no matter what I do, but basically it was the lower heater hose. Ah, screw it, I can't really get it on camera. It's what you see like kind of blurry in the background there. And all I did was just go ahead and tighten it down with a ratchet, and it seems like it's good now. If you don't hear anything leaking, you can just sit and watch this for a while and see if it goes down. If it doesn't really go down at any significant rate or it barely loses any pressure, then you should be fine. If, however, this can't even hold pressure in that green zone or halfway through that green zone and you just see it leaking, then you know you have a problem somewhere. If we didn't do this, then we would have to find out the hard way by seeing where coolant leaks out of. And if it wasn't something we could fix easily, then we'd have to drain the coolant and fix it accordingly. Ask me how I know. So with that, I should be able to fill my coolant system with some O'Reilly's, was it Xerox bivalveline? I don't know, look, it just says Toyota on it, so I'm sure it can't be that bad. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to do that without spilling. This is my professional grade funnel for coolant filling. Got it from Snap-on. Oh, it's pink. Ah, shit. Well, that was gonna happen inevitably. Could be worse. Could be worse. Could have been better. I don't know why. I always get nervous when I start adding fluids. It's like mechanical things you can easily take apart, but then once fluids are involved, it just makes everything messy. If you... Ah, fuck. Couldn't have timed that one better. Maybe my professional grade funnel isn't up to the task here. I have to go back to Strap-on and get my refund for that. Oh, did I say Strap-on? I meant Snap-on. Hopefully this doesn't take more than 2, because 2's all I got. Oh shit, now it's actually spilling over. Yeah, I could have done all this better. See if we can suck it in here. Well, at least it didn't take more than 2. In fact, I've still got a lot of this one left. Perks of working on smaller cars, I guess. You know, the more annoying part about these spills for me is not that it's hard to clean up, it's just that it's a pain for trying to find leaks later on. Like, I have no idea what's just going to be residue from this and what's going to be actually a problem from a leak that I didn't know existed. So we can check off fill coolant. That leaves us with just the ITB trumpets and the trigger wheel, which I have mechanically done now. now. We just gotta set it up in the ECU and try starting and see if it works. With my cooling system topped off, all that was left to do was install the ITB trumpets that would allow for air intake. I do have a filter kit coming in for this, but it didn't come in time for this video, so for the first start, it'll be without a filter, and that'll probably be fine as long as it's just in my garage. Alright, and there's one more item off the list. So with that checked off, we're down to the trigger wheel, which is really the only thing remaining. Actually, I kind of lied when I said that the trigger wheel was all that was left to configure, because there was one more thing I hadn't done. Remember that Arduino fuel pump controller I mentioned earlier? Well, the wiring still looked like this, so I needed to clean it up a bit. I 3D printed the housing for it so that it would have a safe place to be inside the cabin, and then I ended up doing a bit more careful wiring for it so that it was easy to take on and off. I bought a pack of these off-brand Deutsch connectors, but they work really well, and they were actually really easy to set up. That plus a bit of heat shrink goes a long way in making my wiring a lot more organized and easy to disassemble later if I ever need to. But with my fuel pump controller all set up, all that was left to do was hook up the battery, put it on a tender, and start trying to crank it. Well, I'm sort of lying there. There was a bit of configuration work I had to do on the ECU side, and unfortunately for all these clips, my microphone wasn't hooked up correctly, so you couldn't really hear anything I was saying. But once I felt like I had enough parameters configured, I went ahead and went for that first crank. It didn't crank on the first try, but there was a pretty good reason for that. I opened up the trigger scope and looked at the readings for the crank position sensor, and they were all over the place, which was a little surprising at first until I realized that I had it configured as a reluctor sensor and not a Hall effect sensor. Once I had that configured correctly, I went for a few more cranks, but then this happened. Oh shit, what the fuck was that? I wasn't really sure what this was at the moment, but in hindsight I'm pretty sure this was a backfire, and I can explain why. The next parameter that I tried to configure was my ignition timing. Now, you need to do this with a timing light, so I got my timing light out and ready and pulled my laptop off to the side so that I could hopefully see it while someone else cranked. I honestly couldn't really read anything with the timing light, so I figured I was probably 360 degrees off in timing because I saw a video about this and it seems like that's a common error with people setting up these ECUs for the first time. So I set my ignition timing offset to negative 360 degrees. Essentially what was happening is that the spark plug was firing at the top of the exhaust stroke, not the top of the compression stroke. Now even after I fixed this, I still couldn't really see anything with the timing light, and that's because I don't think there's actually a mark on my crank pulley. I should have marked this with a pen or something before when I had everything apart, so I'll have to take a few things back apart and make that mark when I have everything at top dead center. But now with my ignition timing in place, I should be able to get a first start out of it, so let's see what happened. By the way, at this point my girlfriend had come out to see what was going on, so that's the other voice you hear in the background. Try again. Oh boy! It started! Okay, I gotta open the garage door if we're actually gonna do this.
So this could give you carbon monoxide poisoning.
If we kept the garage door closed, it would. Okay, this should be it. Okay, well, that wasn't gonna last forever, but...
What do you mean that wasn't gonna last forever?
Because we've got a lot of tuning to do.
It smells like a fucking cat.
Because there's all this fresh stuff in the engine that's getting burned off.
You're gonna fucking kill me.
And there you have it, the first start of my 20 valve swapped AE86. This swap is nothing revolutionary and has been done by a lot of people for a long time, but this was my first time doing a standalone ECU, so it was pretty good to finally get to this point and see it all working. I've got a lot more to figure out, and I need to learn entirely how to tune this thing, which I probably should be taking to a professional tuner, but I'm just going to try it on my own first and see how far I get. I do have a wideband O2 sensor installed, so I should have all the tools I need to do this, but again, I have no idea what I'm doing, so we'll find out the hard way. Like I said, there's plenty more work left to be done, but all that will have to wait until a future video, so if you want to see that video when it comes out, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, it helps a lot. On that note, I forgot to make a comment about this in the last few videos, but we recently hit 500 subscribers at the very beginning of the new year. Thank you all so much for your wonderful support, it means a lot to me, and it's really good to see the channel growing. My goal is to continue making content like this for people like you, so that you can enjoy it. And if you have any comments or suggestions, then go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. I'm probably going to be taking a little bit of a break from this project, but don't worry, it will come back. I just need to do a few other things first before I dive too deep into this one. I've been working non-stop on this to get a first start out of it, and we finally achieved that goal, so it's time to take a break and move on to a few other things. Next week we'll be doing some work with the E36, so stay tuned for that. As always, thank you so much for watching, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.